Hey guys, welcome to part 2. Time to start installing some horns. Now as you can see, I've got the grill off the Tahoe already, and I've already been kind of looking and seeing where I'm going to put these things, and probably stared at it for over an hour trying to figure out where I wanted them. Now, like I said before, a lot of people just put these under the bed of their truck, and you know, that's fine. Still going to be crazy loud. I just wanted mine in the front, so I was kind of committed to that. So unfortunately, once I got the grill off, there's not nearly as much room up here as I thought there'd be, or at least that I hoped there'd be. But, you know, I think after an hour or so of trying all kinds of different configurations, I think I finally figured out where I'm going to put them, and started making some brackets for it. Didn't show any of that because I knew you guys didn't want to watch me stare at this thing for an hour. So I'll go ahead and show you what I got going on these brackets, and we'll get ready to start installing these babies. Yeah, I'll show you my brackets I made. Like I said, there wasn't nearly as much room up here as I was kind of hoping there'd be, but you know, some of these newer Fords and Dodges, you've got enough room up here to stuff a little mini refrigerator up in there. But, you know, this older Chevy, not as nearly as much room, but we'll still get them in there. That's what I said. It's a beautiful thing about these horns. You can mount them in all sorts of different locations. You know, you could have one on this side, one on that side, no problem. Still sounds awesome. But anyway, here's my bracket. Let's see, we got the first one here. I just bolted this one on, just a little tab for the horn there onto my cooler. This one, there wasn't much to bolt to, so I ended up having to weld this tab on for another one. Got this goofy little tab here for another one. Had to weld that one on too, just because I'm already welding, why not? And then we got this bracket over here I made. This is going to hold the last horn right here, and also a place to mount my solenoid. And you know, I had to weld that one on too. And I did have to go ahead and notch out my core support here a little bit, and kind of fold it over just to make more room right here where the horns are going to go. But I think it's going to be alright. The only thing I still have to do is the stock wimpy little horn used to bolt up here, and it's not going to fit anymore. And I tried to move it down here, but it's still kind of hitting the horn, so I'm going to have to make a longer bracket to move that down. But we don't even want to use that thing anymore. But, you know, if you live somewhere where you have to do inspections or things like that, you're going to need your little puny horn. Give them a honk. But anyhow, there it is. I'll go ahead and get them mounted in there and show you guys what it looks like. Now, one thing I'll point out real quick, when you go to mount this air valve up, there's an arrow on here. If I can get it to focus because my camera's in flash mode. There it is. See that arrow right there? You want to make sure it's installed the right way with the air going the way that arrow goes, or else the solenoid won't work. Now, I wanted to mount this thing right here, but unfortunately this bracket was turned the other way around, and you know, my air line was on the wrong side and the air hose was on the wrong side. So what I ended up doing, I pulled the electromagnet portion off. No big deal. You just take the nut off, take that off, and then I took those four bolts out, rotated the bracket around the other way so it would mount up the way I wanted it to. But now I don't know if that's going to void any warranties or anything like that. You might want to check with them, you know, before you do it, if you're going to do it. But I just went ahead and took it apart real carefully. Didn't even break this seal. I just took the screws apart, turned the bracket around, and tightened the screws back up before you know, that seal broke loose or anything. And then we put it back together, no problem. Now we got the air going the way we want it to. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get this stuff tossed on here, show you what it looks like. Alright, so what we have here is your basic stock horn relocation kit. Went ahead and made up a little bracket. We're going to mount that back underneath the core support out of the way so we got room for our real horns. And like I said, I just throw this thing in the trash, but here in Ohio, occasionally you might get stopped by a state trooper and they want to do a little roadside inspection, check your lights, make sure your horn works, that kind of silliness. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this thing on there, but I doubt I'll ever use it again now that I've got real horns. But now, since I'm going to be mounting the air tank and the air compressors and everything up in the back of the Tahoe, I decided to run the air line through the inside, you know, instead of running it down to the floor somewhere back there and then, you know, along my frame rails up under the truck. I decided to just go ahead and pull all the interior panels out and run it right down along the bottom here on the inside. And I left this panel off so you can see where I ran it. You can see there's the big air line and there's the big power cable. Actually, that power cable used to be for an amp, but now it's going to run my compressors and the fan and everything back there. But so that's going to run right along under there. Get that cover back on. You'll never know it's there. And we'll go up through the firewall and down the fender and out the front. Hook it up to the air valve. And I found a place to run it through the firewall there just above my hood pull cable. I don't know if you can see that grommet down in there. Got a little 5/8 hole in there and a 1/2 inch grommet in there. Now make sure if you run it through anything like a firewall or through the floor of your truck or, you know, the bed of your truck, things like that, make sure you use a grommet, because, you know, you don't want to have a sharp hole sawing its way through that air line and have a blowout on you. That wouldn't be very good. So, but there it is. Got that all set up, ready to go, and I can run it down along my fender here and out beyond the headlight and up to my solenoid up front. Alright, got the airline in. Went ahead and ran it along the fender well through the firewall, like I said, and zip tied it along my fender well. And there's a nifty little access hole right here underneath the headlight that works out real well. If I can get my camera to show you, nice smooth edges, no sharp edges to rub a hole in this thing. Because like I mentioned with that grommet, you don't want any sharp edges rubbing away on this thing. You know, it's going to be vibrating going down the road. Because, I mean, you know, you're going to have 150 psi in this line. It's a pretty good sized line, so you don't really want to have a blowout. But anyway, got her all mounted up. And it's going to run right over to my solenoid. It's going to work great. Don't pay attention to any of these wires. I got everything moved out of the way when I was welding stuff, so it's kind of a mess up here. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this stuff mounted up. See what it looks like. Alright, there's what it looks like all mounted up. Now, it had to be a little crooked in there in order for it to fit right, so that wasn't an accident. That's just the way they had to be. And that kind of bothers me, even though you're never going to see it. I guess I'm just kind of a perfectionist that's not very good at being perfect, I guess. But they're all mounted up in there on their new mounting brackets. You just got to go ahead and get them all plumbed in. I'll come over here and show you what it looks like up closer, but I have to switch my camera to flash here because the lighting kind of sucks in here. But all right, let's take a closer look. You can see we got them all mounted up on their brackets. And it's kind of a tight fit down there below the bumper, but they've all got a little bit of space to them. You can see how I had to notch that core support out a little. There goes our train going by again for sound effects, just so we can get a preview of what this thing's going to sound like. Anyway, got the air valve all mounted up, wired in, the air line's hooked to it. Now about the wiring, you notice even my ground wire, and here's my other connection right here. Every connection that's going to be made on this kit, it's all going to be soldered. It's going to have a good heat shrink with glue in it, so you don't have to worry about corrosion or problems like that later on down the line. You know, do it right the first time. You know, don't just twist the wires together, use butt connectors. You know, take the time, solder it, put on a good heat shrink, especially if you can get a heat shrink with the glue in it. It's the best kind, and you'll never have a problem with it. So anyway, here's what it looks like. Now for the bottom down here, as you can see, there's nothing anywhere near these little posts, you know, that I could even really make brackets for to hook that to. Alright, so for the bottoms, we're going to have to go a little low tech. You can see I got this filler panel here that goes between the bumper and the grill and the core support there. Kind of locks the bottom of the grill in place. And you can see a couple spots like there, and right there. I had to notch it out to make room for the horns. So I went ahead and on the back side of this thing, I drilled a couple holes. That way I could lace the zip tie through. And then once it's in there, we're going to go ahead and just zip tie that, and it'll sturdy them horns right up, make it real nice. That's a pretty low-tech solution, but, you know, those things are nice, lightweight, plastic horns and everything, and, you know, they're mounted pretty solid on the tabs up top anyway, so once we get that in there, get those secured, it's going to be just fine. I don't really, not real proud of the zip tie idea, but that's the best thing we can do, and these things are pretty solid to begin with, so that's just going to go ahead and keep them from vibrating around, and that'll do it. Then we just got to get them plumbed up. I got that filler panel back in. The zip tie idea worked great. Those things are rock solid. And you don't really see them, and especially once I get the grill in, you're never going to see them, so works good. These things are solid. We're ready to go. Plumb them up. Alright, well there it is all plumbed up. All my air lines ran. And I try to do my best, kind of bundle them together, you know, zip tie them together, kind of make them sturdier, make it look a little better too, but, you know, more importantly, keep them from rubbing and chafing and wearing holes on anything. You know, it doesn't look too bad. You might be thinking, sure would have looked a lot better if you didn't have this big goofy loop in there for this horn, or, you know, this one loops down and around. Now, the reason I did that, it's very important that all these airlines are the same length. Now, they give you 10 foot of this hose, so you get a maximum 2.5 foot, you know, 4 pieces, 2.5 foot, 10 foot, from your air valve to your furthest away horn. But, just because, now, I needed that maximum 2.5 feet from my valve to reach to this horn. So that means even this closest horn needs to be 2.5 feet. That's why it's looped around like that. Because if I would have ran it right from here to here, sure, it would have looked better. But then this horn would go off before any of the rest of them did, and your horns would sound silly. So you want to make sure that those are all the exact same length. But yeah, there it is. It's all set. Now I just got to go ahead and get the grill back on and get the wiring done. Alright, now for the wiring, went ahead and did the same thing I did for the airline. Got the grommet and the firewall there. Got my big power cable coming through for the compressors. I got my the 2 wires for the 3-way switch for the horn, and the blue wire goes up to the air solenoid for the air horns there. And I got all this come through, left them nice and long so I can cut them the length I need once I figure out where to mount my switches. And I got my dash all tore apart here, looking for a place to mount those switches. And even though Chevy gives you a big old dash, they really don't give you any place to mount switches back then. There's a couple spots over by my radio where you see those red wires hanging through, but those are already used up for my light bars, so you know, not really any flat spots. And even if I wanted to mount one here, there's no room behind there for a switch because there's panels under there, steel brackets and whatnot. So not really many places to mount switches, but fortunately, if you got yourself a piece of aluminum angle and you got a few minutes, you can make a nice little improvised switch panel here. I'm gonna go ahead and mount that up in the bottom of my dash. It's gonna hold my 2 switches for my horns, my button for my remote drain kit, and it'll have an extra hole for something later. You know, maybe I'll add something else later on. So, well, there it is. Got my little homemade switch panel all wired in, mounted up, ready to go. Now this first switch is a 3-way switch. I've got connected to the output side of my horn relay. That way when it's in the bottom position, when I push the horn button on my steering wheel, it only honks the stock horns. And in the top position, it'll only honk the air horns. This switch is my ignition switch. This is connected to the ignition power, so it only has power when the key's on. And in the up position, that'll turn on my compressors in the back, turn on the relays, and that'll shut them off. The momentary switch for my remote drain kit. When I want to drain the water in my tank, I just push this button. There we go. Done deal. Water's drained. And I added an extra switch. It's not hooked to anything yet, but like I said, it's hard to find a place to mount switches on this thing, so I went ahead and added an extra one. I'll use that one later. But there it is. Wiring's all done. Now we just got to go ahead and get the box built for the back. But this video is starting to run long too, so we'll go ahead and stop it here for part 2. And we'll go ahead and start building the box to put the compressors and the tank and everything in for part 3. So thanks for watching, and be sure to check out part 3, where we go ahead and get that box built and try these babies out.